Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm pleased to be joined by Lane Montoya, who is an Army spouse living in Korea and a freelance digital marketer and entrepreneur. We do not usually tell people where you live, but it really makes a difference this time because you're going to tell us a little bit about your nonprofit that you started to benefit military
Yeah.
spouses. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But first of all,
Mhm.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to stay up late and talk to some great people. I love
I was
doing
going to
this.
say thank you for staying up late. It's past midnight where you are, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm a night owl by nature, so this is not a huge lift for me. So I just really appreciate the time.
No, this is perfect. So I want to jump right in because you've done a lot, and sometimes it can be, we were talking about how you moved overseas, and you had talked, we talked in the green room about how you had a job when you went overseas, and
Right.
then due to unforeseen circumstances, you had to find your way to freelancing and then to entrepreneurship. And so I think you're the perfect person to talk about this to other military spouses because sometimes it can be such a daunting experience to find a job that many of us are willing to take, whatever
Mhm.
comes our way, regardless of the conditions of employment, because we find ourselves moving overseas and having to be in a position of, oh, great, now I thought I was bringing a job with me and now I'm not, and I
Mhm.
just want to work. So you talk though, like in your highlights, you talked about non-negotiables, right? And
Yeah.
I love that because, like I just mentioned, sometimes we're just willing to take whatever comes our way because we just want to work. Like we've been looking for a job for 12 months. We only have like maybe 2 more years left there. We just want to work. So, can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit more about non-negotiables and what military spouses should consider before they interview and or accept a job offer?
Yeah, and I want to say to start, I don't think a lot of people know enough about non-negotiables because, we think about them all the time, but we don't actually, you know, really think about them when we go into a job interview or if we're researching different opportunities, reading job descriptions, reading company values or their mission statement. All of that's going to play into what defines your non-negotiables. So, like, an example would be for me, family time is very important to me. And so, how can I work for somebody or be my own boss in the sense of I'm going to be fulfilled not only in my work, but as, someone who's values family time? How can I balance those two? So, I think it's definitely important to always, make a list, write down what's important to you. How would that line up with company values, company mission, what the job description is going to tell you, what you're going to be doing? Because a lot of times I think as spouses, we say yes all the time. We're yes people and we
And
want to
then
be
we
people
figure it out.
pleasers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we get burnt out so fast. And especially in a new job, you just take a new job, you don't realize what you're getting into because you didn't talk about those things in the interview. And then you just keep going and going and going until you finally just keel over because of burnout. So always have a good list of non-negotiables, keep them on your to-do list or a place where you can easily read them all the time. Always research people that you're going to be interviewing with, their company, and see if everything aligns just right. Because I think, the better you find somebody that you think you're going to work well with, the better off the career is going to look.
I think this is a really important discussion because so often hear from spouses who are like, I'm so scared they're going to not hire me
Mhm.
that I have very few non-negotiables because I'm willing to negotiate everything away just to work. And I was one of those people, right? And it wasn't
Right.
until later that I realized, wait, no, there's a situation here where I might actually end up paying to work because they're paying me
Mhm.
so little. Because I think we go in with the mindset that, well, I was volunteering before. So anything they pay me is more than they paid when I was volunteer, not
Mhm.
understanding that we may have to, if you only have one car and now you need two cars to get to work, that's an expense. Gas is an expense. You might need to dry clean more outfits. You might be eating out more often because like you're
Right.
both out of the house and you may have to buy more convenience food, right? And you
Mhm.
might be paying for childcare. So yes, when we were volunteering, we weren't getting paid, but we also weren't putting out a lot of money. And so
Right.
I think we need to move away from comparing it to, but I was volunteering and anything is better, any pay is better. And that's not the case. We don't want you to put
Mhm.
yourself in a situation where you're paying to work. And then I love what you said about the importance of family time and workplace flexibility, because you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. If that is something that you really value, you need to be honest with yourself and write it down.
Right.
Because if that is something you really, really value and they don't provide that, you can't really get mad about it because you never told anybody
Right.
that was really important to you.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And I want to add on top of that as well. Um, so like we always are job searching, we're looking for different things. I think it's also important to just remember, to have negotiables as well. Like what are you willing to be flexible on? Is it going to
Mhm.
be pay? Is it going to be hours? Is it going to be travel? Like think about those things too, because that can also help define your non-negotiables a little bit more.
That makes absolute sense. And I love that. And so I kind of teased everybody that you had started a nonprofit called the OCONUS Project,
Mhm.
which hopes to help facilitate easier transitions for spouses moving from CONUS to OCONUS. So I have a question around that. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how military spouses can better prepare career-wise for a move overseas.
That's a really good question because I think there's a lot of things we think about in a move, right? We just want to get everybody there safely. We want to do everything the right way, have all the paperwork that we need. But I think it's also important to remember if you have a job and you're traveling with it, you have a really great employer that's going to let you work overseas. You need to have an open and candid conversation about how that's going to work. Because SOFA is this big thing, right, that hovers around OCONUS people. And if you've never heard of what that is, it's status of forces agreements. I won't get too technical on what all of that means, but definitely take some time to research that, especially wherever you're going, and see if your employer is up to supporting you in terms of you living overseas. Like for me, when I came here with a position, I was had like super over communicating everything that I was doing. And I was communicating what hours I would be available. Sometimes I do stay up late, sometimes I don't, or I'll work throughout my day with no messages or anything. Like things are going to look definitely very different than if you were in the States. So definitely think about all those things, make sure you're okay with it, make sure your employer's okay with it, because you have to be flexible in all of this, right? That's one big lesson that I learned take bringing a job overseas is that the more flexible you can be, but within your means. You don't want to stay up till 3 a.m. doing work just because they're available
Right.
and while it's technically you're supposed to be in bed. So definitely think about all of those things and make sure you are able to work with somebody who's willing to work with you, because that's really the biggest thing that I can preach to anybody that's going overseas.
No, and you're absolutely right. And I mean, the sofa situation makes everything a little bit trickier. And because it's not consistent from installation to installation or country to country, you're absolutely right in saying they should really research if work is even allowed in their
Right.
location. So great point. Um,
Mhm.
I was heartbroken when I read that you had started in sports management and marketing, and then you had to move away from that because you married someone in the military. I mean, you've become quite adept at pivoting, to find opportunities while you're moving around. But do you see yourself going back to your original career in sports management and marketing if the opportunity arose? And
I absolutely would go back in a heartbeat. I don't
would
mean to
you?
interrupt, but that's something that I always think about and it was rekindled because we had the opportunity to go to a baseball game here in Korea. Just an awesome experience. Like people are in this standing the whole time you're at bat, doing coordinated cheers and chants with the cheerleaders. And it's just a very electric environment. And when I got to sit in those stands, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little misty-eyed sitting there because I was like, this is what I loved to do, and I had to sacrifice that. And I would go back in a heartbeat. Um, so I really hope there is a day where I can have a remote job in sports management. That's definitely something that's not totally portable because they
Right.
prefer people in the office, and in the action. But if there's ever a day where in a remote position comes up and I'm like, I'll be all over it.
That's so cool. So how are you keeping yourself current to make the transition back easier if the day arose?
Yeah, so definitely so sports is kind of easy. You can just follow scores, you can follow the game, you can follow your favorite teams and be up to date on the trends and who's winning what, especially with the Olympics coming up. It's going to be a lot of fun to keep following that. And pro sports, will happen all year round. You can always stay on top of those, see what's going on, follow them on social media, because my background is social media and digital marketing. So, their social media is kind of like, it's a good space to learn new trends and what people are liking and not liking. And I've also started volunteering on the installation that we're at right now. They're needing a little bit of help with like sports and fitness programs and marketing them. So I'm taking that on to kind of keep me fresh in the industry.
That's awesome. I feel like I could have asked you so many questions between, like you making several pivots, from to founding a nonprofit, that supports military spouse professionals and, everybody moving overseas, to like your knowledge about, marketing and digital marketing. There's so many questions I could have asked. So I think I'm just going to ask you, what should I have asked?
Um, I don't know. I think we covered quite a bit just within this short amount of time, but I definitely think if I could leave with words of wisdom, it would definitely be know your worth, know your value. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about non-negotiables and finding the right job that works for you. Never settle for less than what you think you're worth. Always, you're always gonna know what you're gonna be worth in here and what you're gonna do on the outside. So always keep that in mind.
That's awesome. Those are great words of wisdom. And I'm so excited for you. And I can't wait to see where the OCONUS project goes. And I'll be tracking you. But thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you to our friends at USAA for making these conversations possible. This has been so much fun speaking to Mary. And I hope that you guys will fill out your own military spouse highlight because we would love to tell your story. We will see you back here next week. But till then, have a great week. Bye, guys.